a group of men who put together a very, very important document called the United States Constitution. In addition to John Lewis's birthday, this particular document is the mandate. And here we are 75 years later, from Selma to Sausalito, and we have officers like Chief Rohrbacher and Sergeant Georges brutalizing journalists as though they are criminals, when in fact it's the cops who are the criminals. I don't know if you've seen the video of what happened to Jeremy. Jeremy has been a journalist in this town and in Sonoma for the last 25 years. He's covered all kinds of incidents of public importance, and he was covering the homeless camp that has been created by the City of Sausalito. And I want Robbie to come and talk about what is going on and why this is such an important case of public importance. What is going on with the homeless here? Because this is the backdrop against which Jeremy was filming on the day that he was brutalized and criminally attacked by the Sausalito Police Department. So here is Robbie.
Here in Sausalito, there is just an appalling disregard of the law by Sausalito Police, by the Richardson Bay Regional Agency that's been crushing people's homes, crushing people's boats out on Richardson Bay. And the festering abhorrence that this exclusive enclave has against working class people, against people that do not fit in to the exclusive pedigree of those who live up on the hill, has allowed corruption and police violence to fester on the waterfront. The encampment, Camp Cormorant, is a result of the policies of the City of Sausalito and the Richardson Bay Regional Agency, crushing people's boat homes on the anchorage without any due process of law. I've been, just from advocating, I've been arrested like 6 times, 7 times. I got a whole bunch of times where they filed charges against me to the DA's office. I didn't even know. I went to the DA's office. I have 4 no charges filed at the DA's office of criminal cases that Sausalito PD put onto me. I have one that in Contra Costa County, where a boat was towed to a marina there illegally and destroyed, where I tried to intervene and was also arrested. Again, no charges filed. I got an illegal camping ticket down and got choked out by Sergeant Georges for having a tent up. Again, found not guilty in absentia, didn't even show up to my court date, and they found me not guilty. So,
that's power.
Right there, they feel like they're above the law, and today this lawsuit is going to start changing the tide, because now accountability is coming. And right now I have in my hand 1,800 signatures of people who are demanding that Sergeant Georges be removed. This is a dangerous cop. This is a violent man in a position of authority with a record of attacking people and getting away with it, because John Rohrbacher just looks the other way, because the festering abhorrence that this city has against people that don't fit in is allowing cruelty to run the city of Sausalito. And with that, I want to pass it off to Jeff, who's not only, he is a leader on the anchorage, lives on a boat, has also been suppressed as a voter trying to run for election in the city of Sausalito. He tried to run for the city of Sausalito, and they dragged his boat out into the unincorporated waters so he couldn't run for office. So there's voter suppression going on in the city of Sausalito. This is a national issue, and we're witnessing it right now. So here's Jeff Chase.
Thank you, Robbie Paulson, really inspiring, and Charles Bonner and Jeremy Portje, especially, a real journalist that came to witness What started as a First Amendment demonstration and protest and has now become a FEMA jail. Good morning and welcome to Jubilito. The city of Sausalito is a legal fiction. It's organized on the cinders of Water Street. That was the headquarters of the Mariners that burnt down mysteriously on the eve of the city's incorporation 100+ years ago. What this place really is inhabited by is flesh and blood, human beings, all equal in the founding documents. And especially in God's eyes. $1 billion is not 1 billion votes. If and when, which is the same word in Hebrew, the government of this town, the mayor, the city council, and the city manager are unelected, recalled, or resign, we can begin again. Jubilee is declared. That's freedom, that's forgiveness, and that's fruit trees, not war and poverty and pollution. We can start tying these government officials with their financial connections to the consultants and contractors, as well as the polluters and weapons manufacturers. They picked the wrong sailors to beat. We have and will again sail under the Golden Gate when we are ready, not serve as vessels to transfer loot, gold and silver to a government and its enablers that is clearly out of control. So happy Monday, happy President's Day, and thank you for coming.
Very good. Thank you very much. Can I see the hands of all the people who've been brutalized, arrested without cause by the Sausalito Police Department? I mean, show the country on President's Day how your civil rights, your constitutional rights have been violated by the Sausalito Police Department, those very individuals who raised their hand and swore to uphold and defend the Constitution have now become criminals and committing criminal acts against people of this community, and including journalists. And I want to bring on a journalist of 25 years in this community who was viciously beaten and seized, had his camera equipment seized, had Sergeant Georges blocking his camera as he was attempting to film the brutality against the homeless, who've been made homeless by the city of Sausalito. Now, Mr. Jeremy Portje.
All right, Jeremy.
It's weird to be standing here in the middle holding the microphone. I'd prefer to be over there behind the camera documenting this, but you know, I didn't make that choice. My choice was to cover this travesty, this injustice committed by the county of Marin and the city of Sausalito in the creation and what do you call it? They're creating homelessness, they're exasperating the problem and not doing anything to fix it. And when they attempt to fix it, they make it worse and they cover it up and they lie. And so that's a very compelling story.
That's right.
I was there just to witness this travesty going on, to tell the rest of Marin County what's going on here from a very, honest look from the inside out, not the typical fluff piece on homelessness, and was silenced by the police department. Thomas Georges decided to make me stand here today and talk about the brutality, the injustice, and the corruption within the Sausalito Police Department. We have a police department or a goon squad, whatever you want to call them, with no oversight. There is no oversight of this police department. And it's a sleepy town, Sausalito, who suspects corruption here. And so it's allowed to fester and fester, and they picked the wrong person to arrest. They picked the wrong person to assault, and then they tried to lie about it. And not okay. So not okay. So as a journalist, my intention is to draw spotlights on injustices, and that's what I'm doing. I set out to tell the story of homelessness, but here I am now talking about policing in Marin and corruption within the police department, which is something homeless people have had to fight for years, and people just didn't pay attention. And now that it's happened to me, I'm glad people are paying attention to, the abuse of power here in Sausalito. So, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for your bravery, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Which, there needs to be discipline for his choices and action, and he's, a commanding officer. So it shows you how high up the corruption goes. Really, what I'm after is change. Really, what I'm after is to ensure that my daughter and future generations are safe from the brutality of the police system. A system that has allowed Georges to abuse people for years. There's references years old of him violating and physically assaulting people, and he's still employed by the police department. And then the system allowed an officer, a known liar. He's on the Brady list. They based their actions of seeking a search warrant to violate my First Amendment civil right based off of the word of police officer on the DA's Brady list. Yeah, like how is he an effective officer at this point? So I want change. I want change. I want to ensure the safety of journalism, the sanctity of journalism and the freedom of press to tell these stories and not allow governments to silence us.
How many journalists have been arrested so far in this country?
So I don't have that number offhand, but it's staggeringly, it's growing exponentially. 2 years ago, I think there was 54. I think the year before that there was 154, or maybe 200, and we're at like 30 now. So the numbers are going up, and CNN, there was a reporter arrested live on camera by the police department, and we can't let this corruption continue.
When Georges and these other cops injured Jeremy, they didn't just hurt him, they hurt his entire family. So I wanted his wife, she was also a plaintiff in this lawsuit, Amy, to come and talk about how this affected your family, as long with your daughter Mia.
I'm Mia Portje. I'm Jeremy's daughter. On November 30th, I got a phone call from my mom. She said Jason had just called her. She couldn't make out what he was saying, but she heard screaming in the back. She told me to keep my phone close because something didn't feel right. And if you know my mom, she says that all the time. And more often than not, she's exceptional at de-escalating situations. I've seen it myself. I come back 5 minutes later to a text from my mom. Dad got arrested. I felt like many others that day, vulnerable, confused, and stuck. Stuck because Dad got arrested, Mom's at work. Where do I go? Who do I call? But stuck because my dad is often a safe ground, a voice of reason, and someone who can just make you feel okay. We later found out from videos that many of you have seen that the screaming in the back of the phone call was a violent, unhinged police officer tearing my father's rotator cuff in a vengeful and unnecessary arrest. As a family, we've had to come to terms with the fact that my dad is a victim of police brutality. We've all seen the videos on social media. We've heard stories from families who are not as fortunate to have their loved ones here to tell the story themselves. But never in a million years would we have thought that my dad would be the focus of those petitions and protests. We often get faced with the question, how can I help? What can I do? Well, Sausalito, you, as a city, need to come to your own terms. This is not just happening in big cities like San Francisco and Oakland with high crime rates. Police brutality is happening here, in your backyard, on the streets you drive to take your children to school, on the roads you walk on your Sunday strolls. It's happening here. So I beg of you, my family begs of you, to know what's happening in your community. Listen, and be willing to hear the ugly, because it's there.
Yeah, my name is Steve Zeltzer. I'm with Work Week. One of the questions is the attack on journalists, as you were saying, Jeremy, is San Francisco, Brian Carmody, the police went into his home, wrecked him, and wrecked his equipment, grabbed his equipment. The question is why aren't the district attorney and Rob Bonta, the attorney general, enforcing the SHIELD Act in California, which is supposed to protect journalists? And the question, why aren't they? Because they're a clear violation of journalists' rights. Isn't that a violation of the law that they're not enforcing the California law, which is supposed to protect journalists?
It absolutely. In fact, as recent as October of 2021, Governor Newsom signed into law another law to protect journalists. You shouldn't need another law other than the First Amendment. But the police officers continue to violate the rights of journalists. And that's why this lawsuit has to reinforce that right of journalists, reinforce the right of the First Amendment. So these laws are not being enforced, and because these particular officers committed crimes against Jeremy, we are going to take this lawsuit and first give it to the district attorney of Marin County to prosecute these cops for the assault and the battery and the false imprisonment and the torture that they did to Jeremy. Secondly, we're going to give the lawsuit to Rob Bonta at the California Attorney General to prosecute these cops. And lastly, we will also give it to the U.S. Attorney, Mary Garland, to prosecute these cops. These cops committed crimes. And when you commit a crime, you go to jail. These cops need to go to jail. We are not going to tolerate this abuse again under my watch in my city as long as I'm an attorney.
And so it's so exciting to that vision is so exciting, especially when we consider that every single boat home that's been crushed on Anchorage, not a single person had a day in court to contest a boat being crushed, their homes being crushed, their possessions being crushed, being stolen by employees of the United States Army Corps, private contractors in San Rafael, stealing people's possessions after they've been evaded. So I wanted to connect that with some of the people from the Anchorage who are living under basically terroristic policies. And does that sound right?
Yes,
does that sound right? So I want to pass it off to Arthur Bruce and Bob Scholke. Arthur Bruce recently was attacked by an employee of the City of Sausalito, Urban Alchemy, and sustained injuries, was sent to the hospital. I just want to hand it over to you, Arthur.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Had an overwhelming amount of support from the community and reporters and journalists since my attack last week. I've been anchored out here for 6 years. Facebook just reminded me that 6 years ago today I was sailing across the beautiful bay to Richardson Bay, and I really didn't know much about it except that you could anchor here, and it was closer to my work, being a landscaper in Marin County, and I just had no idea what I was getting into, and it's been an amazing thing to be a part of. It's been mostly sad and beautiful. If you could imagine getting in your car and leaving for work, and there's 2 bulldozers parked outside your house, and they might crush your house while you're at work. That's what we live with on the water.
That's right.
I went under the radar for 3 years until the RBRA started to crack down and hired their enforcer, Curtis Havel, to violate our civil rights with no due process, crushing people's boat homes, making them homeless during a pandemic. It's just unconscionable. I don't like bullies. And when Curtis Havel began to bully me and bully us, it did not end well for his career. Now I'm being bullied by Urban Alchemy, who works in coercion with the Sausalito Police Department. And the Sausalito Police Department is covering for Urban Alchemy, and Urban Alchemy is covering for the Sausalito Police Department. A few hours before I was assaulted, I was doing an interview with NBC5, and I told them they were putting trouble on top of trouble, that this was not sustainable, and it was going to end with someone getting hurt or killed. And a few hours later, I was in the hospital with a sprained wrist and some torn ligaments. And after I went on Monday to ask for a copy of my police report at the police station, the cops started gunning for me. They're harassing me now, threatening me with citations. It's just a god-awful waste of taxpayer money, and I just got to echo everything everybody said today. It's got to be reformed. This has to stop.
The police department continued to harass him. They do arbitrary things like make it hard to park next to where your tent is, and he got a permit and legally applied, and they gave him a permit to park there. Well, later that day or the next day, an officer came to take the permit away and give him his money back. He said, "No, thank you, I don't want a refund." And the officer began to tease Arthur. He said, "Why are you shaking? Why are you nervous? Why are you scared? We're not here to hurt you." Not realizing how many months before his coworker assaulted and hurt me. So I don't know what the ignorance, the heartlessness, the brutality of this police department is just, it's unconscionable. And the training, and resources seem non-existent. There's no de-escalation techniques. In fact, you have an officer making fun of somebody who's anxious and scared to be around a police officer, and that just is, again, not okay.
Play by their own rules. I wasn't intending on speaking today, but I lost it after that because, I've been complaining about the department for many, many, many months, and it's fallen on deaf ears. And I witnessed Georges beat Jeremy. And that never should have happened because he's one of the officers, along with Stacy Gregory and Nick White, that I've also complained about. And I just wanted to point out that when we met with you, Mr. Bonner, there's one thing that I said to you, and that was, don't let them get away with this. So I was really happy to read what you filed. And yes, the city has contracted with Urban Alchemy to provide what they call enhanced security management to the camp. And this is a group of ex-offenders, and they have many of them, probably the good majority, exhibit they have not been fully rehabilitated, and that's demonstrated in their behavior. And I was assaulted by one of their employees and transported and had a corneal abrasion. The following week, the night before Arthur was assaulted, I witnessed someone from the team aggressively approach him and intimidate him verbally out of the tennis courts when he was just trying to bring a woman who's wheelchair bound her belongings that were being moved from the park area to the courts. And then and I reported it to Urban Alchemy the next day, and that night he was assaulted by that staff member. So I'm glad so many people are coming together to draw light to this. It's going to take a whole team.
My name is Emilio Pineda. I walked my way from Guatemala all the way to the United States sometime 30 years ago. I was running away from, of course, our foreign policy, destroying countries that are beautiful for the benefit of corporations. And I have seen the attacks. I have seen the tactics. And it's the very same thing that this police department is using against their very own people. So it is time to end. It is time to start a new life in America. I believe this country has what it takes. And what it takes is all of us. We, the people of the United States, regardless of color, origin, but we are here now, and we are part of this beautiful place that we need to keep working to make it a better democracy. And thank you all very much.